Hello, folks. I am the old sergeant. Recently, Ben Shapiro posted a poll about what Republicans and Democrats were most concerned about. The results were astonishing and made me understand the divide between conservatives and liberals much better. Starting with the GOP, titled Most Concerned About Police Support and Illegal Immigration. The question, how concerned are you, if at all, that the following are a problem for the country? And it was asked of Republicans and those that lean Republican. At the very top is illegal immigration. And you see 81% are concerned or very concerned. You add another 7% for somewhat concerned. And that's pretty high on the chart. And it makes sense because we have the elites, both the Republican and Democrat elites, wanting this illegal immigration because the Republicans want the cheap labor. The Democrats want the illegal votes. So they will steal money from all these Americans to give money to the illegals. And nothing gets done. After the end of the last presidency, everything that he had managed to do is getting undone now. And they are so desperate that they are allowing people with COVID and other diseases loose within the country on a massive scale. And of course, this is really frightening to Americans, not only because of the immense costs. It is because when you flood the country with people that aren't of the same customs, culture, traditions, history, and religion, you destroy that country. Next on the list is lack of support for the police. It seems that the police can do no right. There's all sorts of shootings of where you have a police officer shooting somebody. If it is a white person, no matter the color of the police officer, you don't hear anything about it. The only time you hear something about it is when a white police officer shoots a black man. Then it is big thing. Yes, you've got people out there convincing the blacks that the police are out there hunting blacks. When if you actually look at the numbers, it's less than 20 a year. And if you look at each individual case, you'll find it was justified. And when it wasn't justified, police officer goes to jail. The lack of support for police means that the police aren't going to risk themselves to protect the public. High taxes, this is always something that you have with the GOP, is the more you tax, all you do is you take the strength of the economy down. For some reason, the liberals don't seem to understand that you actually make more money for the government if you lower taxes, because it spurs on the economy. Now, there is a line there someplace, but we haven't really found what's the best exact tax rate. Most people, most of the folks in Congress just vote for taxes just because they don't like the people that they're taxing. Got to go after those rich folks, even though they actually are funded by lots of rich folks. But they think it sounds good to the public. No, high taxes is always a bad thing. Next is liberal bias in the media. 75% are very concerned or extremely concerned about this. And this is quite understandable. I can not tolerate watching very much of modern news because it's all based on hate the conservatives, orange man bad, hate the conservatives. I mean, you even have commentators on the news now talking about, well, we need to drone strike those conservatives out there. Concentration camps to re-educate them. And they actually believe this stuff that they're saying. When I was growing up, the media was who, what, when, where, how, why. I didn't know Walter Cronkite was a liberal until much later. The Huntley-Brinkley report, didn't know if either of those guys was a liberal. Back then, it was classic liberalism. It didn't matter to the job. But now, everything about the mainstream media is agenda-driven. Next is the general moral decline of the country. We see this every day where we look out and what was considered horrible and you would be shunned or sent to jail for is now celebrated. And you're a bad person if you don't join in the celebration. Socialism. I fought socialism for most of my life because I am old enough to have had training in what socialism is in school and how bad it is and what happens, the millions of people that die under socialism. But apparently our kids were not trained in socialism. In fact, they're trained and they were taught that socialism is a good thing. It just wasn't applied right. That they could do socialism better than it was in the past. No, socialism fails everywhere it's tried. Our kids are being taught socialism and they don't understand, they don't know that this results in millions and millions of people dying. It doesn't work. If you look at our blue cities, where a whole bunch of socialism was tried, look at how disastrous they are. How disastrous when you try to run a state like California and the major cities that are falling apart and being ripped apart with this attempt at socialism within the cities. It doesn't work. It never works. It leads to nothing but death and misery. But that's what's being taught in our schools. Next on the list is Antifa violence. They say they're anti-fascists, and to them a fascist is anybody who isn't them. They are the fascists. They're the authoritarians. You will do it our way. And they want nothing but destruction. They don't care if conservatives are in power or liberals are in power. They will go out and commit violence. Who is paying for all these people, all these kids with too much money and too much time that think they are saving the world by destroying America, when all they're doing is destroying the businesses of blacks? The blacks go out there and beg them not to destroy their businesses, and they say, we're helping you, as they destroy the businesses. And you have the DAs letting these people go. They commit felonies. They're just let go because they're the same mindset. Destroy America to rebuild a socialist utopia. So nothing happens to these people. And boy, when the last president tried to send in federal officers to deal with these people, boy, oh boy, everybody's shouting dictatorship. Next is China. 70% extremely are very concerned. And that is because China is trying to take over the world. They are a socialist, a communist country who wants to take over the world. They think they are the top. They think they're the best. They're extremely racist. If you're not Chinese, you are nothing but dirt to them. And they're doing every way possible to destroy freedom in the world, to topple governments like the United States government. They are the enemy. The next one, legal abortion in the third trimester. And I don't even think we need to say which trimester it is. As far as conservatives are concerned, abortion is murder of a baby. And there's no argument with it. There's no saying, okay, you can abort before the 3rd trimester. No. If you abort a child, you have murdered a child. You have murdered a human being, and you need to live with that for the rest of your life. It's not something to be celebrated. It is something awful, horrible. You've destroyed another human being, and all the offsprings that human being would have had are now never going to exist because you were damn selfish. We have a whole bunch of people in this country wishing to adopt. Far more people, far more couples that want a child, that can't have a child, that want to adopt a child than there's availability. But no, it's too inconvenient for you. You decided, I'm just going to kill the baby as part of birth control. Well, if you had carried the baby to term, you could have given it to a loving adoptive family. Election fraud is the next one. Can't say anything about it, because if I say anything about it, if I haven't already said something that's going to get this pulled, saying what I think about the last election would definitely have YouTube pulling this video. Which brings us to the next line item, tech company censorship. How in tarnation did all these companies come under the control of liberal elitists who think it's okay to censor the conservatives, even though this is now the town square. The internet was paid for by the American people. It's ours. Well, until a previous president, President Obama, decided to give it away. But we paid for it. It's the public square now. You can't have any of this, well, a private company can do what it wants. No, it can't. It is either a publisher or a platform. They can't pretend to be both. We have laws. They just said they're a platform. Well, if they're a platform, unless it's illegal, immoral, or fattening, you can't censor it just because of a difference of opinion, or it doesn't meet your ideology, or it doesn't meet the narrative. We can censor everybody. We don't care if that person happens to be the expert in the field he's talking about. Oh yeah, we can censor it. We can take it down. No problem. We have the right to. No, they don't. And I don't know why the last president didn't put a stop to this crap. But we need to put a stop to this tech company censorship. And I'm sure glad to see many countries and states standing up to them saying, we're going to make it illegal for you to censor, and we're going to levy heavy fines if you do. Last one on the list is discrimination against Christians. And this has to do with lots of people wanting to do something that the Bible says you're not supposed to do, that God doesn't want you to do. This is because you want to have behaviors that the Bible says you shouldn't do. So what do? You call everything the Bible tells you to do and what the position of God is on things, you decide to call it hate speech, and that all Christians are purveyors of hate speech. And you're going to see more and more of that, where Christians are going to be shut down because hate speech. Next are the primary Democrat concerns. We'll start here with the Donald Trump supporters. 82%, extremely, very concerned. With somewhat concerned, you come up to 92%. You're concerned about Donald Trump supporters. Like I said before, right now you have all the media out there doing nothing 24/7 but attacking conservatives, attacking the people that voted for Trump, calling them every single ist or phobe name you can come up with. And the trouble is, a lot of people believe it and are terrified. They think their next door neighbor's gonna come over and shoot them. They just drum up the hate for half the population of the United States. And there you have the mainstream media drumming up the hate for the Trump supporters. Orange man bad. And so anybody that supported the orange man must be all those ists and phobes that they can create. Next on the list is white nationalism. White nationalists? Has anybody ever met anybody that thought that the only race you should have in the United States is white people? That is such a rare thought pattern and so utterly wrong. Find these people. Where are they? 79% extremely or very concerned about the white nationalism. Find a white nationalist. Probably could pile them all in the back of a pickup truck. Next on the list is systematic racism. Everybody thinks of systematic racism, that this is 1957 again. We're not in the 50s. Most people have no concern whatsoever about what your race is. the racists do. The racists look at your skin color. And what party spends all their time looking at skin color and saying, we're only going to do this just for black people and not for white people? What party does that? What party says that black people aren't smart enough to get an ID so they can go vote? Who's the people that are always condescending against black people and against Hispanics? Who does that? Well, certainly not the conservatives, because conservatives don't care, because they believe in Martin Luther King, content of your character, not the color of your skin. They don't care, but liberals care. Systematic racism, this is invented. It's invented to create additional hatred. Next line item is gun violence. Got to take everybody's guns away. And of course, this comes from all the people that live in the cities that have to deal with gun violence, that have police officers minutes away from them. Not in the rural areas where the police officer may be 2 hours out, to say nothing of the fact that guns are used not only for hunting, not only for self-protection against people, but for self-protection against wildlife. Guns are a badly needed tool, yet they think that the way to solve it is to take everybody's guns away. And as always, the old cliche is right. When you take the guns away, only the criminals will have the guns. But it's droned into them to the point where I have seen stories about people seeing a gun on the hip of a police officer and panicking and fainting. They're raised to be scared of guns, while those of us in the rural areas grew up with guns. Next line item is Americans lacking health coverage. So what they did with Obamacare is they destroyed the best system in the world to provide health care to people, and destroyed it and made it unaffordable to most people. Most people go without health care now because of what Obama did, because of what the liberals did. They destroyed the system. So yeah, lacking coverage. A lot more people don't have coverage now because they can't afford it than before. Thank you very much, liberals. You did this. Domestic terrorism. 73% are scared of the domestic terrorism. Add the somewhat concerned, you have 94% domestic terrorism. That is because they decided to call all the Donald Trump supporters terrorists. You had Democrat leadership essentially saying that anybody that voted for Donald Trump is a terrorist. You had the events on the 6th of January, which I can't go into detail about my feelings on what actually happened, because of course the video would be pulled. We have events of domestic terrorism. Then you look at it in detail and find out most of the time it's not ideologically driven. It was just somebody went crazy. We do have some standard domestic terrorists. These are the environmentalist wackos. All the tree huggers that think the best thing to do to save a tree is to kill a human, to burn down businesses. We have that type of domestic terrorism. Next is police brutality. Again, everything that happens gets overhyped. Is there police brutality? Yes, it happened. But people think that they're afraid to let their child go to school and walk down the road to go to school because the police officers will come up and start beating their child or shoot their child. They actually believe this. They've been indoctrinated by the hate speech of the left. Police brutality should never be tolerated, but it is not a significant factor in the day-to-day lives of the American people. It's extremely rare. Next is discrimination against LGBTQ Americans. I suppose there could be some discrimination against LGBTQ Americans. Once again, this falls under the no one cares about your sex life. Keep it to yourself. No, you can't jam it down our throats. You can't make us celebrate your sex life. Who you choose to sleep with is no concern of ours. Shut the hell up. Sexism. Where's that today? Most of the stuff that's happening under that line is you're a sexist if you want to date somebody of the opposite gender. How much sexism is there anymore? A lot of times in the sexism, we don't deal with reality. Is it sexist to say that men are more athletic in general than females? Is that sexism now? Or is that a truism? Voter suppression. Well, we have a lot of evidence of voter tampering. Where has the voter suppression occurred? Where? Has anybody been able to point an example of voter suppression? Show me an example. Show me a film of voter suppression. The only voter suppression I've ever seen is when you go to the polls and you have a bunch of liberals out there slamming a bat in their hand, trying to scare conservatives away. People scream and holler about the voter suppression. You're requiring somebody to have an ID as suppression. No. You want to steal an election? You come up with ideas like that. Or the just passed H.R. 1. Next line is student debt. You got yourself into that situation. You got yourself into debt with a worthless degree, thinking that you were going to get a six-figure job with lesbian dance therapy degree. You got yourself in that situation, and then you vote for socialists thinking that they're going to pay off your debt. And what these socialists are planning to do is they're trying to take the money from the people that couldn't afford to go to college and give it to you. That is complete and utter nonsense. You got yourself into debt. You got yourself a degree that is worthless. That's on you. And finally, last on their list here, capitalism. They've been told that capitalism is bad. The system that have brought more people out of poverty around the world than anything else that's ever been created. Certainly wasn't communism that did it. It was capitalism. But what you're seeing is not capitalism, it is crony capitalism. It's fascism when you get the government and the people in government and industry together to take from the people, to work together to take the life earnings of people. Crony capitalism. Real capitalism, laissez-faire capitalism, with some controls that can be argued about, is the best system ever created, bar none. You can see from these two different worldviews that conservatives and liberals now, the left and the right, Republican and Democrat, are complete different entities. Their mindsets are completely different. How can we live together? How can we even talk to each other when we think like this so differently from each other? The reality is that the conservatives, the stuff you see on the conservative list is the same old stuff. You go through the list, that's what conservatives have been saying for a long time. Though you do have the new stuff like tech company censorship, Antifa violence, the fact that China now is a real threat over what Russia was the real threat before. Totally different in the way we think. We have slight differences in the conservatives, but you look at the liberal side, that has gone so extremely left. They have shifted the Overton window to the breaking point, to the point of insanity, where if anybody was talking like this, thinking like this 30 years ago, they'd be put in a white straitjacket and taken away for treatment. It's completely insane. Most of the stuff that you see our government now coming up with, like H.R. 1, legalizing the stealing of elections. What do you all think? This really shocked me to see the differences in thinking. I could understand and see most of the stuff on my side of the aisle, the old conservative side, the liberals. How on earth do we talk to them? How on earth do we convince them that a lot of the things that they're worried about is nothing to worry about? They're not going to get beaten up by Donald Trump supporters. Things like white nationalism. Find a white nationalist somewhere. Hell, there's hardly any even Ku Klux Klan anymore. And there used to be a lot of them around the country. How do you stop them from thinking that because of their race, the whites are keeping them down when we don't care? How do we change the country for the better when we have these people worried about such things, most of which is something they don't need to worry about? I'm the old sergeant. Stay informed, prepared, active, prayerful, and as always, stay vigilant.